She thought she had won. She thought Sophie was gone forever. But what if Araminta's greatest victory is actually the beginning of her complete destruction? After everything we saw in Bridgerton Season 4, Part 1, it is easy to believe that Araminta is simply a cruel stepmother who cares too much about money and status. She humiliates Sophie, controls her daughters, and acts as if kindness is a weakness. But in Part 2, if the story follows the book closely, her fate is not just embarrassing, it is darker than most people realize. Not because she dies, not because she goes to prison, but because she loses the one thing she values more than anything else: power. In Season 4, Part 1, Araminta already shows us who she truly is. She is obsessed with appearances. She carefully controls how her family is seen in society. She hides their financial struggles. She pushes Rosamond to marry rich, not for love, but for survival. Every decision she makes is about control. Control over money, control over reputation, control over Sophie. But what makes her dangerous is not just her cruelty, it is her fear. Araminta is terrified of becoming irrelevant. She knows that without wealth or a powerful marriage, she has nothing, and that fear slowly turns her into someone capable of destroying an innocent girl's life. In the book, her actions go far beyond harsh words. She does not just insult Sophie, she accuses her of theft. She uses her social position to have Sophie arrested. Think about that. A young woman who has already suffered years of emotional abuse is suddenly thrown into prison because of a lie. Araminta knows exactly what she is doing. She understands how society works. A servant accused of stealing has no voice, no protection, no one willing to defend her. Araminta counts on that silence. She believes that once Sophie is locked away, Benedict will forget her, the problem will disappear, her family's reputation will remain untouched. But this decision reveals something much deeper about Araminta's character. She does not simply dislike Sophie, she sees Sophie as a threat. Not because Sophie has money or status, but because Sophie has something Araminta does not: genuine kindness and inner strength. Every time Sophie survives humiliation without losing her dignity, it exposes Araminta's own emptiness, and that is what she cannot tolerate. At the same time, Araminta's relationship with her own daughters begins to crack. Rosamond may be her favorite because of her beauty, but even she is not safe from her mother's ambition. Araminta blocks potential matches that are not prestigious enough. She speaks about marriage like a business deal. Love does not matter. Happiness does not matter. Only title and rank matter. And Posey suffers even more. Treated as an embarrassment because of her looks, she grows up knowing her mother's approval is conditional. Araminta does not build a family, she builds a strategy. This is important because in Part 2, the very strategy she carefully created starts to collapse. When Sophie is arrested, Araminta believes she has removed the final obstacle, but she forgets one crucial detail. The Bridgertons do not abandon the people they care about, and when someone like Violet Bridgerton begins to ask questions, secrets do not stay buried for long. Araminta's darkest mistake is not sending Sophie to prison, it is underestimating the consequences. Because once the truth about the hidden dowry begins to surface, the woman who thought she controlled everything may realize she has been standing on fragile ground all along. And when that ground finally breaks beneath her feet, who will be there to catch her? The moment Violet Bridgerton learns about the hidden dowry, everything changes. Until now, Araminta has been fighting a servant with no protection, but she is not prepared to fight a Bridgerton. Violet does not raise her voice. She does not create a public scene. Instead, she does something far more dangerous. She starts asking questions in the right places. She visits the magistrate. She reviews Lord Penwood's will. She confirms that Sophie was legally left money, not a small amount, but a proper dowry. enough to secure a respectable marriage, enough to prove that Sophie is not what Araminta claims she is, and most importantly, enough to expose that Araminta knowingly withheld it. This is where Araminta's fate begins to turn dark. Because withholding a dowry is not simply unkind, it is illegal, it is fraud, it is a betrayal of a dying man's final wishes. And if that information reaches the wrong ears, Araminta will not just face embarrassment, she could face legal consequences. For a woman who built her identity on superiority and status, even the threat of investigation is terrifying. At first, Araminta refuses to panic. She convinces herself that Violet will not push too far. After all, scandals hurt everyone involved. But she forgets one thing. The Bridgertons protect their own. And by this point, Sophie is no longer alone. When Violet confronts Araminta privately, the conversation is not loud, but it is sharp. Violet makes it clear that she knows about the dowry. She knows about the false accusation, and she knows that if Sophie remains in prison, this information will not stay secret for long. Araminta suddenly finds herself in a position she has never experienced before. She is not the one in control. For years, she has used fear to silence others. Now, fear is being used against her. If the matter becomes public, society will not see a respectable widow protecting her daughters. They will see a woman who stole from her stepdaughter and manipulated the law to cover it up. Lady Whistledown's pen would destroy her reputation in a single issue. Invitations would stop arriving. Doors would quietly close. Whispers would follow her into every ballroom. Araminta begins to understand that prison was never Sophie's final destination. It might become hers. And yet, what makes this even more devastating is what happens inside her own family. Rosamond starts to sense that something is wrong. The tension in the house becomes impossible to ignore. Servants whisper, letters arrive, meetings happen behind closed doors. The illusion of perfection begins to crack. For someone like Rosamond, who was raised to believe image is everything, this instability is frightening. Posey, however, reacts differently. She does not worry about society first. She worries about Sophie. When she learns the truth about the dowry, something shifts inside her. For the first time, she sees her mother not as strict, but as unjust. And that realization is powerful, because Araminta's authority has always depended on her daughters believing she is right. The darkest part of Araminta's fate is not just the external threat, it is the internal collapse. Violet gives her a choice. Drop the charges, publicly acknowledge Sophie's dowry, allow her to marry Benedict without interference, or face consequences that will reach far beyond private embarrassment. It is not a request, it is a warning. Araminta must now decide what matters more, her pride or her survival. And for a woman who chose pride her entire life, that choice may be the most painful punishment of all. But what happens when Sophie is finally released, and years of anger that were buried quietly are suddenly impossible to contain? Sophie's release is not loud. There is no grand announcement, no public apology. The prison doors simply open, and she walks out with her head held high. But inside, something has changed forever. The girl who once endured insults in silence is no longer willing to accept humiliation as her fate, and Araminta can see it the moment their eyes meet. For years, Araminta relied on Sophie's obedience. She relied on her patience. She believed that Sophie would always choose dignity over confrontation. But prison changes a person. Being locked away for a crime you did not commit leaves scars that do not fade easily. And this time, Sophie does not lower her gaze.
When the truth about the dowry is acknowledged, even if done quietly to avoid scandal, it reshapes everything. Sophie is no longer just a servant in society's eyes. She is a young woman with legitimate standing and financial security. That changes how people speak to her. It changes how they look at her. And most painfully for Araminta, it proves that she was wrong. Araminta tries to maintain composure. She tells herself that survival matters more than pride. She agrees to drop the charges. She allows the engagement to move forward. But inside, she feels something she has never truly experienced before: loss of control. Then comes the moment that defines her downfall. Sophie confronts her, not with tears, not with trembling apologies, but with clarity. She speaks about the years of cruelty, about the insults, about the way Posey was treated as lesser. She speaks about prison, about fear, about being erased. And for the first time, Araminta is forced